In the lead-up to the 2024 election, a significant portion of voters, many feeling the strain of rising inflation and deteriorating economic conditions, turned to Donald Trump with the hope that his populist message would provide the change they so desperately sought. After all, Trump's campaign in 2016 had been rooted in promises of change, of draining the swamp, and of being the voice of the forgotten working class. He touted himself as a businessman who could fix the nation's problems, someone who understood the financial struggles of ordinary Americans because he had done it himself. However, if voters believed that Trump's second term would provide the relief they had hoped for, they might be in for a harsh awakening. Since securing the nomination once again, Trump has built a cabinet that is not only packed with billionaires, but has amassed a collective net worth surpassing $340 billion. This includes a group of individuals with ties to the wealthiest sectors of society, billionaires whose personal fortunes dwarf the economic struggles faced by ordinary Americans. The question that must be asked, can the populist rhetoric of Donald Trump, which continues to resonate with voters, really provide meaningful change, or is it simply a smokescreen for an administration that is increasingly about serving the ultra-wealthy elite? In this video, we will explore the irony behind Trump's populist message, the impact of his billionaire cabinet appointments, and the broader consequences for American democracy. By unpacking the way Trump has positioned himself as a champion of the working class while filling his administration with billionaires, we will shed light on the growing divide between the populist image Trump projects and the reality of his administration's policies and priorities. 1. Trump's populist promise, a false hope for change. Trump's rise to power was in large part fueled by his ability to tap into a widespread sense of disillusionment. The 2016 election revealed a deep divide in American society, one where many working-class voters, particularly those in industrial and rural areas, felt left behind by the political establishment. It wasn't just a disillusionment with Democrats. Many of these voters saw the Republican Party as part of the same elite establishment that had ignored their needs for decades. The rhetoric Trump used to capture their support was simple yet powerful. "I alone can fix it." He positioned himself as an outsider, someone who had never been part of the political elite, someone who would take on the entrenched powers in Washington. And for many, especially in swing states, this message resonated. Trump's populism was effective because it promised to address the very real economic challenges that people were facing, particularly those related to jobs, wages, and living costs. During the 2020 election cycle, inflation and rising costs of basic goods, like groceries, were major concerns for American voters. According to post-election polling, a large majority of Americans felt that their financial situations had worsened over the past few years. Many of these voters turned to Trump, believing that he was the solution. Yet, Trump's second run for the presidency in 2024 has shown just how much his policies and actions diverge from the image of a populist fighter for the common man. 2. The billionaire's cabinet. The irony of Trump's appointments. As Trump's 2024 campaign gains momentum, one of the most glaring contradictions of his populist message is his cabinet appointments. Instead of surrounding himself with working-class heroes or even moderate business people who might have the common touch, Trump has surrounded himself with a collection of billionaires whose combined net worth now exceeds $340 billion. This list includes some of the richest people in the world, individuals who have amassed their fortunes through industries like technology, finance, and oil. This is not just a minor issue. It speaks to the core of the Trump administration's priorities. With 11 billionaires running key positions in government, Trump is essentially building a government by billionaires, for billionaires. These are not the kind of individuals who have ever been interested in fighting for the working class. They have built their wealth by creating systems that enrich them and those around them, often at the expense of everyday people. To put it into perspective, the collective net worth of President Joe Biden's cabinet is around $118 million. This is already a significant amount, but it pales in comparison to the staggering wealth represented in Trump's cabinet. When you have billionaires like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and others, people whose fortunes surpass entire countries' GDPs, it becomes clear that Trump's America First agenda is more about enriching the ultra-wealthy than lifting up the ordinary citizen. Additionally, this billionaire government is not an isolated phenomenon. Since his 2024 campaign started, Trump has appointed even more billionaires to his inner circle. These billionaires aren't just figureheads. They are individuals who will hold immense influence over policies that directly affect the working class. How can we expect these individuals to have any real interest in addressing inflation, rising healthcare costs, or the burdens of working families when they have lived in a completely different economic reality for their entire lives? 3. The danger of Trump's populist narrative. While Trump's billionaire appointments might be the most visible sign of his hypocrisy, they aren't the only concerning aspect of his administration's approach. There is a larger issue at play here: the continued selling of a populist narrative that benefits the rich while offering empty promises to the working class. Trump has repeatedly used populist rhetoric to distract from the policies he has implemented. From his tax cuts for the wealthy to his deregulation of industries that harm working families, Trump has repeatedly shown that his version of change is anything but. The truth is that billionaires like those in Trump's cabinet have no incentive to enact policies that would alleviate the struggles of average Americans. They don't need to worry about inflation or the rising costs of healthcare and education because they live in a world where money is never a concern. Instead, Trump's policies are designed to protect the interests of the wealthiest individuals, ensuring that they can maintain their power and influence while working people are left to fend for themselves. And yet, despite all of this, Trump's populist rhetoric continues to resonate with large segments of the American electorate. This is partly because his supporters have been sold a lie that a wealthy businessman and reality TV star will somehow fix the economy and solve the nation's problems. But the reality is that these billionaires are not going to save the working class. They are far more likely to further entrench the systemic inequalities that have kept wages stagnant, driven up the cost of living, and gutted the social safety net. 4. The historical context. Have billionaires ever helped the working class? The idea that billionaires will come to the rescue of working-class Americans is not only unrealistic, it is entirely without precedent. For the last 40 years, billionaires have consistently used their wealth and influence to secure even greater wealth, often at the expense of workers and the general public. From corporate tax loopholes to aggressive anti-union campaigns, the ultra-wealthy have used their power to shape policies in their favor. Can you think of a single instance in the past 4 decades where a billionaire, despite their immense wealth, stepped forward to create good-paying jobs or champion the rights of workers? Sure, some billionaires might donate to charity, but these donations rarely address the root causes of inequality or create systemic change. The rich might throw a few dollars at causes they care about, but it's always with an eye toward bolstering their own public image or furthering their interests. Even when billionaires do engage in philanthropy, it is often in ways that serve their own economic interests. Take, for instance, Jeff Bezos' purchase of the Washington Post or Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. These moves weren't about improving the media landscape or ensuring that the public has access to unbiased information. They were about consolidating power and influence, 2 things that billionaires like Bezos and Musk are keen to protect at all costs. Trump's second term, if it happens, will likely continue in the same vein. The rich will get richer, and the working class will continue to bear the brunt of the economic burden. Those who voted for Trump in the hopes of fixing inflation, improving healthcare, and creating jobs may find themselves facing a harsh reality. Billionaires are not coming to save them. Instead, they are the ones running the government, using their influence to create policies that benefit only themselves. As Trump gears up for another term in office, the question remains, will his populist rhetoric continue to be enough to win over voters, or will the reality of his billionaire-filled administration finally break through the facade? After all, it's clear that Trump's appointments tell a different story than the one he's been selling. His cabinet, worth more than $340 billion, represents a stark contrast to the struggling working class that Trump claims to champion. In the end, Trump's populist message is little more than a smokescreen for a government that is increasingly shaped by the interests of the wealthy elite. The question we must all ask ourselves is whether the American people will continue to be swayed by the promises of a billionaire president who has done little to address their economic struggles, or whether they will finally recognize that the system is rigged against them and that true change lies not in billionaire-backed populism, but in the hands of everyday Americans fighting for a fairer, more just society. The challenges ahead are immense, but they can only be overcome if we acknowledge the truth. Billionaires aren't going to save us. It's up to the people to demand the change that they so desperately need.